My name is Jean Shinoda Bolen, MD, and I'm a psychiatrist, a Jungian Analyst, an author, and a feminist activist. And I like to use my full name on formal introductions because my middle name, Shinoda, tells all about my ethnic background, that I'm the third generation pure Japanese born in America. If I had to choose one word to summarize my life and how my life was influenced, that word would be synchronicity. And synchronicity is a word that was invented or named by the psychologist Carl Jung. As a Jungian analyst, following in the Jungian tradition, it is amazing. But the most important thing is, well, what does it mean? So I use the word synchronicity because time and time again, the reason that I've ended up doing so many of the things that I've done happens to be the coincidence of timing. For example, one of my major areas of activism could not have happened had I not been born when I was born. First of all, I am now 83 years old. And that means that I was born before World War II, that because I'm of Japanese ancestry, when Pearl Harbor was bombed, all the Japanese and Japanese Americans on the west coast of the United States either were incarcerated in concentration or relocation camps or fled and moved out of the area, and life was really changed. I was lucky enough not to be in a camp and not to be behind barbed wire during the duration of the war, but to leave California with my brother and my mother and father and go across the country. So there's synchronicity in the timeline of what I experienced because I lived through this time of transformation of the country. And it just to say, so much happens when you're a kid and you're in the middle of a historical time. Right now, as this is being filmed, we are in a pandemic. This is the second month of the pandemic, and all of the coronavirus pandemic. And somehow we are all come to a full stop and have an opportunity to think much more deeply about what we're here for and what we still have yet to do. But for the timing, I would not have, for example, become prominent in the American Psychiatric Association. But feminism had just begun to influence psychiatry. And so it made a difference. The president of the American Psychiatric Association, John Spiegel, looked around the country for a psychiatrist that would be acceptable both to the establishment and to the rising feminists. And lo and behold, out in California, I was a newly graduate from Langley Porter, the University of California, San Francisco's psychiatric department. And I get a message that I'm being invited to be active in the American Psychiatric Association as a member of one of their major councils, the Council on National Affairs. And it is through that I became active in the American Psychiatric Association and really also learned a lot about so much that there is to learn about the effect of the profession on the patient and to watch it change over time. I went to John Marshall High School in Los Angeles, and there, besides the standard going to school and getting a pre-college background in high school, I also studied public speaking, under the auspices of a coach that was one of the major high school coaches in the United States for public speaking in the National Forensic League. And so I come in as a 10th grader, I hear about debate and standing up and speaking, and it interests me, and I go to the first orientation meetings and start off as a high school debater. And that was a profoundly influential part of my own education because it taught me how to speak on my feet, and it also taught me a lot about interactions with people. At the same time that I did that in high school, I also was a journalism student. So I learned how to do some writing in that area. When I'm asked about how I became a doctor, it looks pretty straightforward that it was a natural thing for me to do because my mother's side of the family was deeply into being doctors. My mother was a physician who graduated from Columbia Physicians and Surgeons. My father's side of the family was much more into the business side, and he had been somebody who had wanted to be a lawyer, but when his family business got in trouble, he was expected to join the family business, which he did, and he did make it a success. But I was influenced by my own talents being more similar to my father's than my mother's, because I wasn't very scientifically minded, and I didn't like math, and that was her major and things like this. And I did like public speaking, I did like to read, the whole liberal arts side, not the scientific side, was me. So it would appear that on the surface that it was natural that I might become a doctor, but not from inside of me, because I had planned to live out what my father could not, which is I could be a lawyer. And the summer before my senior year, I went to a church camp. What happened to me at that summer camp was I was humbled. I was totally humbled by the realization that all the things I was proud of, all the things that I had won awards for and all of that, all of it was good fortune or grace or something, because you see, I'm the oldest daughter in a family where my only sibling, who was impaired, never learned to speak, lived at home until he was in his until I was in my early teens. And then from that point on, he needed to be institutionalized. And I had the sense up under the stars that I could have been him. I'm still here doing what I do, you know? Well, when I'm asked about my personal achievements, they're the ones that show, and there are ones that do not show. And the personal achievements that show are the titles on 13 books, and the foreign editions that number well over 100, the recognition within my own profession of becoming a clinical professor of psychiatry, a lifetime fellow of the American Psychiatric Association. These are things that are outer kinds of honors or titles or whatever. But the accomplishments that I feel strongly about are the ones that don't show. That is the capacity to help people to become who they could become and overcome the kinds of obstacles that are psychological. The work of doing depth analytic work as a Jungian analyst, as well as the work of a feminist writing books that out of which I have learned what matters to people. They go out into the world much as, if I blow a dandelion into the sky, it may land anywhere, and maybe only one seed will grow into another dandelion plant. Well, I see my books doing the same thing. The one aspect of my involvement in making this world a better place has had to do with my work and participation at the United Nations. I only was there because a little book I wrote called The Million Circle brought me there. I mean, I've been being a certain advocate at the UN with this idea of mine of women's circles from 2002 to the present, where my current next activism seems to be to have a 5th World Conference on Women in 2022. And that was on course to be in India, and now we're in the pandemic. Who knows? Who knows? But the point of it is really that I have gotten involved in things almost accidentally or synchronistically, and I've taken it and moved with it, and its influence is whatever it will be, actually. I would like to be remembered by the people that I actually influenced to become who they could become, and the joy they had at finding their true path. I would like to be remembered for having, I'm often remembered for my laughter as well as for the words that I have taught. And I think it really has to do with enjoying this life as the gift that you have, including the hardships, and how it shapes you. I'd like people to value and have gratitude for being here now and having an opportunity to make a difference in maybe just one person's life, or maybe on the planet.